If you're serious about history, strategy, or survival, then you're going to want to stick around for this one. I promise, by the end of this video, you'll have 9 survival techniques used during the Second World War, so clever, so effective, that soldiers were literally ordered not to talk about them. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, because The Prepper Historian is where we uncover the gritty, practical knowledge history books often leave out. These aren't just stories. They're lessons that can still be applied today if you ever find yourself in a true survival scenario. During the Second World War, the battlefield wasn't just a place of guns and bombs. It was a proving ground for ingenuity. Resources were scarce, enemy patrols were ruthless, and soldiers had to rely on ingenuity to survive. Many of these tricks were never written down or taught, because commanders feared that if they spread too widely, they might be used against their own troops. Let's dive into 9 of these methods, the kind of knowledge that could save your life in extreme conditions. One of the most understated skills soldiers developed was the art of foraging. In occupied territories, soldiers had to identify edible plants, insects and roots without a guide. What made this so powerful was that these men learned to recognize subtle environmental cues, like certain mosses that only grew near water sources, or how ant trails could lead to hidden insect larvae rich in protein. For a modern prepper or historian wanting to practice this safely, start with edible wild plants in your local area and learn which species are safe versus which are poisonous. This isn't just theory. Marking water-rich areas and edible plant zones can make your camping or survival drills far more productive. Another trick that soldiers used involved creating micro-heat sources from items that were typically considered waste. For example, German troops in the Ardennes found that by layering sandbags with small amounts of oil and fabric scraps, they could produce a slow, sustained heat source that lasted all night. You could apply this today in cold weather survival scenarios by learning how to insulate and concentrate heat from limited materials, creating a sleeping platform that retains warmth far longer than a typical tent floor. Concealing your tracks to evade pursuit is, well, a skill that can make all the difference. Soldiers learned early on that staying hidden wasn't just about camouflage. It was about manipulating the environment itself. Techniques included, for example, walking in streams to wash away footprints or scattering debris to break up recognizable patterns. Practically speaking, this can be applied in survival training or bushcraft exercises by learning to move in a way that leaves minimal trace. Even if you're not in a combat zone, mastering these methods makes you a more aware and careful navigator in the wild. Turning mundane tools into life-saving equipment, well, that's something soldiers excelled at. A pocket knife wasn't just a knife. Soldiers used it to create traps, open canned food without proper tools, or even fashion improvised fishing hooks. They understood the value of resourcefulness down to a single piece of metal. Today, a prepper can take this lesson by practicing multi-purpose use of basic tools. Learn to split wood for kindling, create emergency utensils, or even improvise a mini shelter using everyday items. Finding water when it seems impossible. Now, that's a real challenge. Water scarcity was a deadly problem on many fronts. Soldiers used knowledge of terrain, animal behavior, and condensation collection to locate hidden sources. For instance, in the deserts of North Africa, troops learned to extract moisture from cactus plants or dig small pits to capture morning dew. You can adopt a similar mindset by studying local terrain, observing animal patterns, and experimenting with dew collection techniques in survival exercises. Improvising medical care when doctors were unavailable was, well, a harsh reality for many. Frontline soldiers often had to treat injuries with nothing more than field bandages, antiseptics, and natural remedies. Knowing how to disinfect a wound with alcohol from a flask, or using plant-based poultices to reduce infection, could honestly mean the difference between life and death. Modern preppers can learn from this by maintaining a portable first aid kit and understanding which natural remedies are safe for minor injuries. Using the environment to communicate secretly was, well, absolutely vital. Signal techniques were crucial. Soldiers often used subtle signs, like arranging sticks in specific patterns or leaving faint marks on rocks, to relay messages without radios. Today, anyone interested in survival or historical reenactment can practice this by developing code systems using natural markers. A skill that's, still useful for stealthy navigation or team coordination in wilderness settings. Making food last longer without refrigeration was honestly a constant challenge. Rationing was an art. Soldiers discovered that burying certain foods in sand, wrapping them in leaves, or drying them over indirect heat could dramatically extend shelf life. You can experiment with these methods in modern prepping by drying fruits, smoking meats, or using natural cool storage areas to keep your provisions longer. Staying mentally sharp under extreme stress. Now, that was absolutely essential. Finally, survival wasn't just physical, it was psychological. Soldiers used routines, small personal rituals, and even competitive games to maintain morale and mental focus. You can apply this principle by creating structured routines during long expeditions or emergencies, keeping your mind sharp and your decisions effective when the stakes are high. These 9 World War II survival tricks show that ingenuity, resourcefulness, and observation were just as important as weapons or numbers on the battlefield. They offer timeless lessons for any history enthusiast or prepper willing to study the past and apply it practically. If you found these insights as fascinating and useful as I think you will, make sure to subscribe to The Prepper Historian. Hit that notification bell so you never miss these rare glimpses into the survival skills that history forgot to teach. And share this with a fellow history buff, because, well, knowledge like this deserves to be passed on.